Welcome to our session, Live Events with Microsoft Teams. My name is Thomas Binder. I'm a Senior Program Manager within the Teams product group in Microsoft. Before we go into the content, let's do a bit of housekeeping. You can find additional resources like the PowerPoint for this recording, but also additional recordings and additional PowerPoints if you go to aka.ms/Teams Academy. If you have any feedback specific for the sessions, for this recording and the PowerPoint, please go to our community at aka.ms/Teams community, create a new post and use the label IT Pro Training so we can monitor for it. If you have any feedback for the features, so how live event works, what it does, what you can do, what you can't do, about the user experience, please go to aka.ms/Teams feedback and create a new idea or vote on existing ideas. Please also note that Teams and Office 365 evolves constantly. So it's very likely that by the time you watch this recording, there are already new additional features. So it's important to stay up to date. Follow our blog, aka.ms/Teams blog, to always know the latest and greatest. Also, on this slide, you can see when this session was recorded, and that should give you an idea how recent the content is. Today, we're going to learn about live events. Live events is this functionality within Microsoft Teams that allows end users to run events for up to 10,000 attendees. You can produce and present these live events directly from the Mac or the Windows Teams client. And administrators can manage which features should be available in live events, or well, if live events should be available at all. Please also note that there are a few things out of scope. So we'll be talking about this concept of an external encoder, and we'll talk during this session just enough about it that you know what the external encoder is, but we're not going to do any deep dive on it. Also, the so-called ECDN, the Enterprise Content Delivery Network, we will mention it, but the details you won't find in this session. For the session, we will follow the following agenda. We'll talk about what are live events, what can you do, what's the user experience, what's the presenter experience. Then we look at the background on how live events work. Finally, we're talking about planning and deployment. So what do you need to do as an IT pro to enable your users and get sure that they have a great experience? What are live events? In order to understand the value that live events can bring, let's look at a typical scenario, the all hands. So we have here a company, Contoso. They have several dispersed offices with several thousands of employees. And here's Heidi. She's the CEO of Contoso, and she wants to run a monthly all hands meeting where she gives updates on the status of business, the strategy, and so on. Contoso decides to leverage live events within Teams to broadcast to all the employees, so they can use audio, video, they can share applications and content so that everyone can see, hear the latest from their leader. They configure the access to open for employees only. That means everyone who has an account within Contoso can join the meeting, but no one outside of the company. So now, all over the world, employees can participate in the webcast, they can watch it live, or they can use the recording if they had a conflict during the actual event. Another scenario is the webcast. So now Contoso has a new product and they want to announce it to the world or to certain markets. This is Hans. Hans is the responsible marketing lead for Austria. So Hans uses Teams to schedule a live event and uses that as a webcast for customers, partners, and press in Austria to share the good news about the new product and how fantastic it is. In this case, the access is set to public so that anyone with the invite can join the meeting and learn the latest and greatest about Contoso's new products. So the audience learns all about the new product and is very excited. Press coverage is great, and this was a super easy way for Hans himself as an individual user to set up a live event and broadcast to a large audience of people. Let's take a look at the features that live events provide to users. It's a scalable, feature-rich online meeting. So, as we have just discussed, you can scale to an audience of thousands of concurrent viewers. In the background, we leverage AI for meeting assistance for features like captions and translations. So you can, during a meeting, have live captions so that people who are not on audio or have trouble listening to it can just read what the person presenting is saying, and we can also translate that. Optionally, you can enable a Q&A manager or Yammer social feed integration so you can interact with your audience. Also optionally, you can record the video. There is, after each of the live events, an attendee engagement report available that allows you to get insights how many people participated and how long they stayed on the event. The nice thing about live events is you can consume them from anywhere. The live events enable a high-quality adaptive video streaming that can be consumed on any Teams-enabled device. So on your PCs, on your Macs, on your phones, wherever Teams run, you can participate in the live events. The live events themselves are delivered with minimal lag from worldwide data centers. So no matter where your tenant is located, no matter where your users are, we will always find the shortest path to the users to get sure to avoid any latency. And the bandwidth can be managed with partner solutions, and we'll be talking about that a little bit later in the session. As we have just seen in the example with the marketing manager, live events democratizes the way you can run these kind of large meetings. Every single user who is enabled can schedule and manage easily their own live events from Teams. They can produce and present the live events from the Mac or Teams client. They can present with one or multiple presenters, screen sharing, window sharing, audio, video. They can even present from a Teams room system. Presenters can also dial in via audio conferencing from a phone if they want to. And you can control the access. So you can make it public for everyone. You can just limit it to your company, or within your company, you can also limit it to specific groups or people. And there's no Hollywood experience required to produce this kind of scalable customized live event. Every single user can do it. All they need to do is schedule a meeting from within the Teams client, and then they can have this great experience reaching potentially thousands of people. Let's take a look at the user experience. If you're used to organizing meetings within Teams, then this will be super easy for you because it's basically the same process. You start a new meeting, you schedule a new meeting, then you choose live event, and then you set a few options like the permissions or the production type. You set the time, you configure who is part of the team, and then you just schedule it, and there it is, all is done, can be done within a couple of minutes. This is now the producer view of someone presenting a live event and producing it. You can see here on the top, there are these two windows. The one is labeled queue, the other one is labeled live event. The left one, the queue, is what you want to present next. So you can always queue up the next content. So imagine you're showing right now the video of the presenter, but there's an important slide that you want to bring up. You can have that in your queue, and then you can see below there's the send live button. Once you send the send live button, then it is live and everyone can see it. And that's what you can see on the right, the live event. That's the view that everyone has. Then at the bottom, you see these different presenters. So that's where you could choose the video of different people. You see yourself, you see the content. So that's where you choose the content from. This shows now the Q&A manager. If you decide during scheduling the meeting that you want to have a Q&A manager there, that you want to allow users within the meeting to ask questions so that you can answer them, then you would add the Q&A manager. As you can see, there's a toggle where you can open and close it, so you can open Q&A only during certain times of the call, or you can just keep it open all the time, depending how you want to do that. You can use it to broadcast some messages. So we can see here, there's a welcome message to the webinar. You can ask questions for the presenters here. You could also use it to share links during the session. For example, if the speaker talks about a certain website, well, you could announce the link during that channel. And this is how it looks like when you attend a live event. Please note that the picture, well, it's really big because we want people to really be able to pay attention and have as much screen real estate as possible to follow the live event. On the right, you can see the Q&A. So obviously this meeting has a Q&A manager enabled, so the audience can use it to ask questions. This screen shows the view with captions. So as we mentioned before, we have AI in the background that transcribes whatever the speaker is saying in near time. So if you can't listen to it or you don't want to, you can just read what the person is saying. Please note also that you can change the language of what you are that you want to consume it. So again, our AI in the background will automatically translate it into the language you chose. Finally, after the event, you can download some resources, and you can see them right here listed under the live event resources. You can download the recording, you can download the Q&A report where you can see all the questions and answers. You can download the attendee engagement report and the transcript. Here are a few tips and tricks to organize live events to get sure that attendees have the best possible experience. First of all, do dry runs and rehearsals. Get sure that you as a presenter or organizer or producer are familiar with the features of live events, how they work, that you know what to do when, to have a really good experience. Practice how to use the different tools. Include in your dry runs anything you want to do during a session, such as Q&A and screen sharing. Also remember, each live event can be only started once. Whenever you try to start a live event, you will be reminded about that. But it also means that, well, if you do a dry run, schedule a live event, particularly for that reason, for the dry run, because once started, you can't start it again. From a network perspective, get sure that all the presenter PCs are connected to a reliable network. Test the network before the event to get sure that you have a good experience. Have an event team. You should always have more than one person in the event team, and ideally you have people joining from different locations so that you have an internet outage in one of the locations, you still have someone remote who can control the meeting. Know who is responsible for each of the steps as producing, presenting, and moderating Q&A. For your invite that you send out to attendees, consider using a redirection service, for example, bit.ly, that allows you to have one URL that you communicate to your attendees. It's shorter and easier to read than the meeting invite URL, and it also allows you to change it later on. So if you schedule a meeting and something goes wrong, you can just update the bit.ly URL in the background and don't need to communicate a new URL to your meeting attendees. They will still be able to join from the same bit.ly URL. The meeting start the Teams meeting about 30 minutes ahead of time for final equipment check. Have a slide ready with a nice intro, maybe saying event will start soon, and start the broadcast 10 minutes ahead of time. Have all the audio sources muted during that 10 minutes so that you don't confuse attendees. On your presenter devices, get sure that you mute all notifications. You don't want all these pop-ups and strange sounds. Get sure that you meet the hardware recommendation and stop all unrequired applications during the presentation. Be also aware that there's a certain delay between the broadcast and the time until the attendees will hear what you're saying. It's several seconds, but it can be a little bit, it's something that you need to be aware of. For example, if you're doing Q&A and say, please ask your questions now, get sure that people will need a couple of seconds until they even hear you saying that, and then they will need a little bit more time to ask their questions. So it's always good if you announce people, hey, you can ask your questions now, but then you have still a talking track for the next half a minute so that people have enough time to hear what you're saying and ask the questions. Audio is the most important part of a live event. Use certified audio equipment and also avoid any handheld microphones. If you're using in-room audio for an event, test it before if there's any feedback that you need to take care of. For video, it's important to use proper lighting so that people can be seen very well. You can leverage HDMI as input for your meeting if you have an HDMI capture device. So you can use any other camera equipment that you have if you want to use HDMI. You can also use these HDMI capture devices to capture any PC or Mac output. So that would also be a way how you could share the content of a device to a Teams meeting. Next, let's take a look how live events work. There are certain key roles relevant for live events. First, the tenant admin. While the tenant admin has nothing to do with individual live events, they still need to configure live events within the tenant and get sure that the users who are supposed to organize and present at live events have the right permissions set. The organizer of a live event is the person who sends out, who creates the live event and sends out the invite. And this person is responsible to set the right permissions, what features you want to include, who can attend the live event, but also who is part of the event group, the people who will manage the event and present at the event. The producer is the host of the meeting. They are part of the event group, so they are invited by the organizer to the event, and they will control the media sources that are sent to the live event. So they will choose whose video and whose desktop will be shown during the event. The presenter, well, they are the people presenting using the audio, video, or screen, shared it into the live event, or they might be moderating Q&A. And then finally, the attendee. These are the people who just attend the live event. They watch the event live or on demand, either anonymously or authenticated, depending on how the meeting was set up, how the event was set up, and they can participate in Q&A if Q&A is configured. When an organizer schedules a live event, there are different options. First, where do they schedule the meeting from? The options are Teams, Yammer, or Stream. And all of these different options will affect how the presenters will be able to present the event, but also how attendees can attend. And we'll cover that in the following slides. Producing the audio and video, there are also different options. The one is called in Teams, where the audio and video is just shared like in a regular Teams meeting and then streamed to all the attendees. Or you can use an external encoder, we call it externally, where an external audio and video source is used. Let's take a closer look at this production methods. On the left side, you can see in Teams. All the audio, video, and content is captured from a regular Teams meeting. So all the presenters and the producer, they just join a Teams meeting, they just share their audio and video there as you would in a regular meeting. And then this content is broadcasted to all the attendees. On the other side, we have the option externally, where audio and video is coming from an external hardware or software encoder. So all the media comes together as one stream and goes into the meeting and then is broadcasted to all the attendees. As said, we're not going into a deep dive here on the external decoder, but if you want to learn more, you can go to aka.ms/teams-encoder. Depending if a live event is scheduled in Teams or externally, you will have different features available. You can see here in the table what is available in what situation. So plain Teams, Q&A, the Teams client as video producer is only available if you schedule in Teams. On the other hand, playing the live event in Streams is only available if you schedule externally, and so is the automatic upload to Stream, the embeddable live event player, and the Spotlight live event in Streams. Other features, like being able to play the event in Teams, download the recording, automatic transition to video on demand, you can get in both options. If a live event is scheduled in Yammer, it will show a link to the Teams live event if scheduled as in Teams in your Yammer feed. And it can be watched directly in Yammer if you scheduled it as externally. The production method will also affect on who will be able to watch the live event and participate as an attendee. As you can see here in the table, we have the different attendee types, and we have the two options on how to schedule the live events. And as you can see, only if you use in Teams, you can enable public anonymous users. Guest users and people from federated companies, they can then only participate as anonymous users if you want them to. If you use externally as your encoder, then public, guest, and federated won't be possible. For both options, you can make it available either for your whole company or to specific groups, people within your company. Sometimes it can be confusing. Should I use in Teams a one-to-one call, a group call, a meeting? Should I use a live event that's scheduled in Teams or a live event that's scheduled as externally? This slide will help you to get a little bit an overview. The most important thing to understand is that only the regular team meetings, like the one-to-one calls, group calls, or meetings, they are fully interactive, where everyone who joins the call can just speak up at any point of time, can use the IM chat, and where you can have a very interactive experience. The live events, they are more formalized. It's about broadcasting information to a large group of people, and the only kind of interaction that you can have is the moderated Q&A. Depending if you use in Teams or externally, you can use the audio, video, and screen sharing from within Teams, or everything comes from an external decoder. So you can see here as well that you either choose to do it with Teams, which basically everyone can do it, or maybe you have more professional equipment already that you want to leverage, and then you would be going for the external encoder. This is a high-level architecture. We can see here on the left the person who is the organizer, and they organize the live event either in Yammer, Teams, or in Stream. Depending what production method they chose, it will be either in Teams, where then the presenters, one or many presenters, are using the Teams client, or if the production was done externally, they have their production tools, the media mixer, all this more professional video equipment. And then it comes back to the producer, where the producer is either using Teams or Stream to produce the live event. Then all of that is handing over to our Office 365 Azure Media Services, where it goes via the content delivery network to our customers. Here we have certified third-party enterprise content delivery network providers. We'll talk about them briefly in one of the later slides. And then attendees can attend them either from Teams, Yammer, or Stream, depending on how the meeting was scheduled. Now, let's take a look at media flows. If the production method was chosen as in Teams, then all the presenters, they will join a Teams meeting. It's a little bit a special Teams meeting because you have all the producer controls, but from a media perspective, it's really just a Teams meeting. So all of the presenters will send their audio and video and sharing via RTP real-time protocol to the meeting service, from where it will be sent also via RTP to the Azure Media Services. However, if you use this production method externally, then the video is provided by a hardware or software encoder, and then it's sent via the real-time messaging protocol, RTMP, to the Azure Media Services. So all of that is basically real-time communication. Now, the attendees, they watch the stream via TCP as a stream. This is not real-time communication. They might attend an event live, so it's near to real-time that they are viewing the content seconds after it is created. However, from a technical perspective, from a networking perspective, it is really just a TCP stream that they are consuming. So it's not as sensitive to latency, jitter, packet loss. If you have any of these network impairments, then it might lead to buffering, and attendees will have to wait a couple of seconds until they can continue watching, which is definitely not a great experience, but they will not lose any of the content or miss any of the event. So if you want to provide live events within your environment, these are the network considerations. If events are scheduled as in Teams, the RTP traffic is sensitive to the network. Delay can affect interactions between presenters, jitter and packet loss can affect the quality of audio and video. And also remember, quality issues of the presenter will affect all participants. If one presenter has poor quality sending the video, all of the participants will see a poor video stream. If you're using externally, also the quality issues of the RTMP stream will affect all participants. So get sure that the RTMP stream has the best network available. For the attendees, this being said, watching a video is not real-time communication and is not as sensitive. Any network issues might lead to delay and buffering or reduce the video quality. You should plan for sufficient bandwidth for multiple people to watch from the same location. If you want to learn more about networking in Teams, please go to the network planning session at aka.ms/teams-networking. So what do you need to think about when you're planning for bandwidth for live events? First of all, the presenters. We assume that you have already planned for Teams meetings and you have already doing that as part of the regular bandwidth planning, which should cover the presenters as well, because again, they are just joining a Teams meeting. Now for the live events attendees, first important thing is you need to plan only for the internal participants, because all the external participants not sitting within your network, they will just consume the content directly from Office 365, so it won't consume any of your bandwidth. Then you need to plan for the biggest network impact. So which of the live events might attract the most concurrent users? Will these users watch individually or maybe together in a room? So often it can be a good idea, and a lot of people are doing that if the CEO is doing an all hands, that all the people go together into one big meeting room and watch it together on the big screen. Is there any other network impact that you should expect at the same time? The planning is obviously required per networking site. Different subsidiaries and departments might attend different meetings and it might have different effects on how they consume live events. Ultimately, once you have figured out how many internal attendees you will have, you should expect an average of 1 to 2 megabits per second per attendee. The CDN and the eCDN. We have mentioned the eCDN a couple of times. Now let's see what it is. The CDN is the Azure Content Delivery Network. It's part of the global Microsoft network, and it's used to deliver streams worldwide with local peering to avoid any buffering. So Microsoft has this worldwide network where you can connect as closely as possible depending on your internet provider, and that's from where we are going to deliver the live streams to your end users. The eCDN is an enterprise content delivery network. So this is basically are tools that will help to reduce the bandwidth consumption by sharing streams between users. So imagine you have a branch office and you have 50 users there and they all attend the same live event. Without an eCDN, every of these single users would need the full bandwidth to stream the live event to their PC or device. The eCDNs will allow you to take a single stream from the internet, so instead of 50, you have now just one, and distribute it within the enterprise network. We have a number of eCDN partners that you can see here on the list, and if you need any more details on eCDN, want to know how to get in touch, how to configure that, please go to aka.ms/teams/eCDN. Planning and deployment. In the planning and deployment section, we're going to talk about the required licenses, the policy requirements for creating live events, and then about additional settings and configuration. Depending on the role, people will need different licenses and permissions. For the organizer of a live event, you need either an Office 365 Enterprise E1, E3, or E5 license, or an Office 365 A3 or A5 license, Microsoft Teams, Skype for Business, and Microsoft Stream license. You need to have the permission, each of the users, to schedule live events, and they need to have a permission to schedule private meetings. For the producers and presenters, It depends on what kind of production method they want to use. If it's an in-Teams production, then the Teams license will be sufficient. For any external production, they need to have a Microsoft Stream license. For the attendees, they don't require any license at all. They can just attend. You can configure live event policies from the Microsoft Teams and Skype for Business Admin Center, or you can use PowerShell. Here on the right, you can see a screenshot from the Admin Center, and here in the meetings, you can see the live event policies. You can configure there if people should be allowed to schedule live events, if transcription should be available for attendees, who can join scheduled live events, everyone in the company, only specific users and groups, and the recording options if you want to always record, never record, or the event organizer can decide what will be recorded. Obviously, the event organizer can always set more strict settings. So for example, if you set your live event visibility options to everyone in the company, the organizer could still say, no, I don't want everyone in the company, I just want to have specific users and groups. But they couldn't say, well, everyone in the company, I want to make it also public available. If the IT pro set it to everyone in the company, they cannot go beyond that. These settings can be configured in different policy sets, and then you can assign these policy sets to different users, so you can have users who can schedule live events, who have more permissions than others, depending on what your requirements are. If you want to leverage PowerShell, get set new grant CS Teams meeting broadcast policy is what you want to do. There's also a tenant-wide configuration for live events. This can be done only in PowerShell. It's get or set CS Teams meeting broadcast configuration. And this is where you can configure a support URL that is shown to all your users, where you can point them to some internal or external page where they can get additional information if something is not working. And you can configure here the eCDN if you're working with Hive or Collective. If you're working with RAMP, then there is a different way how you can configure it, and this is out of band, not here within the PowerShell command, but RAMP has very good documentation on that, so just follow the guidance of the partner to figure out how you configure it. There are also other policies that might affect live events. The presenters in a meeting, they should have policies that allow them to share the screen, otherwise they won't be able to share the screen in a live event. Within the meeting policies, get sure that you don't have any policy in place that limits the bandwidth for sharing, because if you do, then the quality of the sharing for the presenters might not be as great as you want to, and then all of the attendees get a lesser experience that they were hoping to. From a management and reporting perspective, currently we have the following. There's an attendee engagement report for the meeting organizer. There's additional reporting possible via integration with Hive Insight Analytics, one of our eCDN partners. And there's call analytics reporting available for the inner meeting. So the Teams meeting where all the presenters are, as said, it's a Teams meeting, a special one because of the controls, but it's still a Teams meeting. So all the call analytics information that you get for regular Teams meetings, you also get for these inner meetings for the Teams live events. Soon, we are going to have usage reporting for administrators so that you as an IT pro can see how many meetings are scheduled, how many people participate, and have more insights into how live events are used within your company. And now, the summary. Today, we covered the live events. Live events allow end users to run events for up to 10,000 attendees. Everyone who is enabled for it can produce and present live events from their Mac or Windows Teams client. And administrators can manage which features should be available in live events. And here we have our resources. Additional sessions and PowerPoints can be found at aka.ms/teamsacademy. If you have any feedback for this session specifically, go to our community, aka.ms/teamscommunity, create a new post, use the IT Pro training label. If you have any feedback for features, how live events work, what they can do, what the user experience is, go to aka.ms/teamsfeedback and vote on existing ideas or submit new ideas. And please follow our blog, aka.ms/teamsblog, to stay up to date with the latest changes in Teams and Office 365. Thank you for attending today's session.